Pray with me, please. O Lord, may the words of my mouth and the meditation of all of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. It had been 20 long years since Jacob left Bethel. That place where God had promised he would always be with him. That place where God said that he too would inherit the same things that he had promised his forefathers, Abraham and Isaac. A promise of plenty, a promise of hope, a promise of greatness. And yet for 20 long years, Jacob had seen none of it. In a promise to receive Rachel and his wife, he was forced to work 7 long, hard years. And he received Leah instead. In a promise to receive some of his father-in-law's sheep and goats and cows and camels, herds of his own, he got none. For 20 long, hard years, Jacob labored and had nothing really to show for it. Where was that promise of plenty? Where was that promise of hope? Where was that promise of greatness? That promise that God would always be there for him. Instead of becoming a great nation, instead of having descendants as numerous as the sands of the desert, all he had was just one more menial task after another. Just one more aspiration to reach for. Just one more reason why things would not change. One more deception, one more grudge to hold on to. So he plots out a plan and escapes, taking with him some of Laban's herds, some of his sheep, some of his goats, some of his servants, his 2 daughters, Rachel and Leah. For 20 long, hard years, Jacob had been enslaved by all of these things that just held him down, things that kept him from becoming who he knew he was supposed to be. So he leaves, he runs away. The swindler was tired of being swindled. And he comes to the banks of the Jabbok River. Behind him, his father-in-law, Laban. In front of him, his brother, Esau. So where are you today? What chasm are you standing on the edge of, knowing for sure what's behind you? Those years of torment and anguish, those years of an unwanted life that you just wish could have been better. Those broken promises, those forgotten hopes. What's behind you? What are you waiting, wanting to escape from? As you stand there, you know, there on the banks of your own Jabbok River, in front is the unknown. Uncertainty, fear, of moving forward. Where are you? Jacob stood there on the muddy banks of that Jabbok River, frightened, not knowing for sure what he would find on that other side. He knew without a doubt that he could not ever go back to the way it was. But he also knew that his brother Esau was somewhere out there on this other side, a brother that he cheated out of his birthright. So he does the only thing he knows to do. He separates himself from his people, from his possessions. He divides everything that he has into two different camps, and he sends them on across the river, and he stays behind. Henry Nouwen, you know who Henry Nouwen is, the prolific thinker, writer, theologian. Wonderful books like Wounded Healer, The Way of the Heart. Henry writes about a time in his own life when he was involved in a car accident. At first, he said, I thought it was nothing. Then I was told I was bleeding internally and I might not live. Surprisingly, I found the threat of death, he said, to be peaceful beyond my understanding. It was only when I woke up in the hospital and discovered myself still alive in this world that I become restless. In my days of recovery, he says, I discovered I had some unfinished business of the soul. There were certain people I still hadn't forgiven. There was deep confessions I had hesitated to make. I realized I had been living in denial of my own mortality. Unfinished business of the soul. Certain people I haven't forgiven. Deep confessions I need to make. For 20 long, hard years, Jacob had been on the run. He had stolen his twin brother's birthright. He had taken his father-in-law's herds and his servants. And he feared for his life. So he sends his family, his servants, his herds on across the river. And he stays behind. And somewhere in the deep darkness of that night, he suddenly finds himself in this life and death struggle for purpose, for meaning. Someone seizes him from behind and slams him to the ground, and he begins this fight for his life. There alone on the muddy banks of that Jabbok River, Jacob faces himself. He faces all who he had become, all that his life was, all of his deceits, all of his denials, all of his dishonesty, the holding of grudges for many long years. And he simply could not let these things go. And they, in turn, would not let him go. It was doing him in. Jacob's conscience was calling him to accountability. That night, there on the banks of the Jabbok River, Jacob had to come to grips with who he was. There in a hospital bed, Henry Nouwen said he had to come to grips with everything that was holding him down. I'd venture to say that there are many of us in this room that have to come to grips with whatever it is that we've been wrestling with for a long time. The question is, can we let it go? I mean, for some reason, we human beings love to hold on to things. We can't seem to just let them go. We burden ourselves by holding on to these things way too long. We beat ourselves up. We wrestle in the deep darkness of our souls with things that we have no business wrestling with. And we end up living these lives of torment, lives of trying to find our purpose, lives of trying to find that promise. All Jacob wanted was to be blessed. All God wanted was a new person. Jacob wanted to hold on to all of these things, and God just wanted him to let go. And so the struggle goes back and forth all night long. I mean, there are many places in the providence of God where God waits to meet us, but I guarantee you there is none greater than where we can find God, and that is those places where we have to finally come to the end of our strength, the end of our wisdom, and are thereby brought to our humility, our helplessness, and our soul is laid open before a holy God. Again and again, Jesus always told his followers, just let it go. Let God have it. Let go. God tells Jacob, let go. And then he asks him his name. Do you remember what Jacob means? Yaakov. It means the heel puller, the leg grabber. My name is Jacob, he says, the trickster, the swindler. My name is Jacob. My father did not like me. My brother cannot stand me. My mother has sent me away. My name is Jacob. I'm driven, I'm deceitful, I'm successful, I'm powerful, I'm lonely. I'm afraid. That is my name. That is who I am. And he lets go. There on the banks of the Jabbok River, dawn had broken. A new name is given. Jacob is no longer Jacob. He is no longer any of those things that have long held him down. He has become Israel. May God persevere. May God endure. May God persist. May God always be with you. Jacob is Israel. God's very own. You've been given a new name too. It happened a long, long time ago when Jesus died on the cross for you. Your name is child of God. You're God's very own. Nothing else in this world can have you. Nothing else can hold you. You are God's. All you have to do is let go.